She mocked, "Rich men don't know how to please a woman." The room laughed, until the Mafia boss everyone feared leaned in and said, "Wanna bet?" That was the moment Arya Blake stopped being safe. Because Lucien Moreau doesn't flirt, he hunts. And the bet she made with him isn't about pleasure anymore. It's about survival. The rooftop lounge in Manhattan smelled of expensive perfume and aged whiskey. Soft jazz floated through the air, mixing with the low hum of conversation that came too easily from people who'd never counted pennies. Golden lights bounced off polished glass walls, and beyond them, the skyline glittered like a promise. Beautiful, ruthless, and eternally awake. Arya didn't belong there. She wasn't poor, but she didn't have money to burn on $200 bottles of champagne and small talk with people who measured worth in stock portfolios. Her best friend Chloe Reyes had dragged her out after a brutal week at the office, insisting she needed one night to feel like more than a spreadsheet. Now Arya stood at the marble bar, emerald green dress hugging curves she usually hid under blazers, pretending the champagne in her hand tasted better than the wine she bought at corner stores. The dress wasn't designer. She'd found it on clearance, but it fit her like it had been tailored for her body specifically. Her dark hair fell in loose waves past her shoulders, and she wore minimal jewelry because she'd never needed much. She didn't try to stand out, but she did anyway. Then she saw him. At first, he was just another wealthy man surrounded by silent watchers and expensive suits. But there was something different about the way the room responded to his presence. When he shifted in his seat, servers altered their routes. When he spoke, his companions leaned in like every syllable mattered. It wasn't about money. It was about power so absolute it didn't need to announce itself. He sat at a corner table with 3 men, each one scanning the lounge more than enjoying their drinks. His expression remained neutral even when people approached to pay respects. His dark eyes, polished obsidian under the amber lighting, studied the space like a man cataloging assets and threats. He wore a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than Arya's monthly rent, tailored so perfectly it looked like armor disguised as elegance. His presence was calm, but it was the kind of calm that made your pulse quicken. "Who's that?" Arya asked Ben Cross, the bartender. Ben froze mid-pour, then cleared his throat carefully. "You don't want to know, miss." That was answer enough. Chloe, perched on the stool beside her, followed Arya's gaze and went pale. "Oh no, 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 no." "What?" "That's Lucien Moreau," Chloe whispered urgently. "Should I be impressed?" Arya took another sip, feigning indifference. "You should be careful," Chloe hissed. "He's not just rich, Arya. He's dangerous. Like, people vanish without a trace dangerous." Arya smiled faintly, emboldened by champagne and exhaustion. They're all the same. Money makes them think they can buy anything, people included. She didn't mean for her voice to carry, but the jazz had dipped into a quiet bridge, and her words floated across the space like a challenge thrown at his feet. Ben's eyes went wide. He glanced nervously toward Lucien's table, and Lucien Moreau slowly turned his head. His gaze found hers across the bar, dark, unreadable, absolutely focused. For one breathless second, Arya forgot how to think. The air felt heavier. The sounds around her muffled into background noise. Then she told herself to stop being ridiculous and looked away. But he didn't. "Don't look at him like that," Chloe whispered frantically. "You have no idea what he's capable of." "I'm not looking," Arya replied, staring determinedly at her glass. "I'm just standing here." "You challenged him," Chloe said. "In public. That's basically signing your own death warrant." "Good," Arya muttered. "Someone should challenge men like him." Lucien Moreau stood. The movement was smooth, deliberate, like a predator rising from stillness. The men beside him exchanged glances but didn't stop him. He adjusted his suit jacket, middle button only, and started walking toward the bar. Every conversation around them softened. People shifted without being asked, creating a path. Even Ben stepped back, suddenly very interested in wiping down the far end of the counter. Arya's heart hammered, but she refused to move. When he stopped in front of her, she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. He was taller than she'd expected, broader through the shoulders. Up close, his features were sharp, defined jawline, straight nose, mouth that looked like it rarely smiled. His eyes were darker than she'd thought, holding depths she couldn't read. He smelled like cedarwood and something expensive she couldn't name, like power-bottled and worn as cologne. "You sound very sure of yourself," he said, voice low and smooth as smoke. Arya blinked. "Excuse me?" "What you said," he replied evenly. "About rich men." She lifted her chin, refusing to be intimidated. "It's just an opinion." "Based on what?" "Experience," she said, crossing her arms. "Rich men like control. They think they can take what they want and walk away clean." His eyes moved slowly from hers to her lips, then back, a deliberate study that made her skin prickle with awareness. "And you think that's all there is to men like me?" "That's what I said." He leaned in slightly, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "And what makes you so sure?" Arya smiled, refusing to show any fear. "Because I've never been proven wrong." Something flickered in his expression. Not anger, something more dangerous. Interest. He leaned closer still, his breath brushing her ear as he whispered two words that would change everything. "Wanna bet?" The question hung between them like a dare, like a contract signed in invisible ink, like the first spark before an inferno. Arya's breath caught. Chloe grabbed her arm, but Arya barely felt it. "What kind of bet?" she heard herself ask. Lucian's mouth curved, not quite a smile, but close. Dangerous and promising in equal measure. And that's how it started. A dare neither of them could walk away from. "Wanna bet?" The words hung in the air between them, half threat, half promise, entirely inescapable. Arya's pulse hammered in her throat. Up close, Lucian Moreau was even more overwhelming than she'd imagined. The sharp angles of his face, the way his eyes held hers without blinking, the barely perceptible curve of his mouth that suggested he already knew how this would end. "A bet," she repeated, forcing her voice to stay steady. "On what exactly?" "On whether rich men know how to please a woman." His voice dropped lower, intimate enough that only she could hear. "You seem convinced we don't." "I'm offering you a chance to prove your theory." Heat flooded through her, part anger, part something far more dangerous. "And if I win?" "You won't." Not arrogance, just absolute certainty. "But if you somehow manage to prove me wrong, I'll admit it. Publicly. In front of anyone you choose." "And when you win?" She emphasized the when with deliberate mockery. His smile widened fractionally. "Then you admit you were wrong. About everything." The bet was absurd. Dangerous. The kind of thing sensible people walked away from without a second thought. Arya extended her hand. "Deal." His hand enveloped hers. Warm, strong, sending electricity racing up her arm. They shook once, his grip firm enough to feel possessive, his thumb brushing across her knuckles in a way that felt entirely deliberate. "Arya Blake," he said, and the sound of her name in his voice made her stomach flip. "I already know everything about you. Where you work, where you live, what you drink when you're not pretending to enjoy champagne." Her eyes widened. "That's thorough?" He released her hand but didn't step back. I don't make bets I haven't already won. Then why bother? She crossed her arms, defensive. If you're so sure, why the performance? Something flickered in his expression. Darker, more honest. Because watching you realize you're wrong will be more satisfying than simply being right. The admission should have terrified her. Instead, it sent heat pooling low in her stomach. Chloe appeared at her elbow, voice tight with panic. Arya, we should go. Now! But Arya couldn't look away from Lucian's eyes. Couldn't break the magnetic pull between them. I'll be in touch, he said, stepping back finally, giving her space to breathe. Soon. I didn't give you my number. His smile was all danger now. I don't need it. He turned and walked away, the crowd parting for him as automatically as breathing. His men fell into formation, and within seconds, Lucien Moreau had disappeared into the night like smoke. Arya stood frozen at the bar, heart racing, hands trembling slightly. What? Chloe breathed. The actual hell was that? Arya blinked, reality crashing back in waves. I don't know. You made a bet with Lucien Moreau. Chloe grabbed her shoulders, spinning her around. Do you have any idea what you just did? He's just a man, Chloe. He's not just a man. Chloe's voice pitched higher. Ben, tell her. Tell her what he is. Ben appeared, refilling Arya's glass with shaking hands. Miss Blake, I'd strongly suggest you forget this evening happened. Too late for that, Arya muttered, downing the champagne in one burning gulp. He runs things, Ben continued quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. The kind of things that don't show up in newspapers. When Lucien Moreau takes an interest in someone, it's not casual. It's not temporary. And it's never safe. The words should have scared her. They did scare her. But underneath the fear was something else. Excitement. Curiosity. The electric thrill of standing at the edge of something unknown and dangerous. I can handle myself, Arya said, grabbing her clutch. Against him? Chloe shook her head. Nobody handles Lucien Moreau. He handles them. Then maybe it's time someone proved him wrong about that too. Arya walked toward the exit, refusing to look back. Refusing to acknowledge the weight of eyes she could feel tracking her movement. Her legs felt unsteady in her heels, but she kept her spine straight, her head high. Outside, the night air hit her face, cool and bracing. The city sprawled before her in neon and shadow, suddenly feeling both familiar and foreign. She'd lived in Manhattan her entire adult life, knew its rhythms, its dangers, its promises. But tonight, everything felt different, like she'd crossed an invisible threshold and couldn't find her way back. Chloe caught up to her on the sidewalk, slightly breathless. You're really not going to walk away from this, are you? Walk away from what? A stupid bet? Arya laughed, but it came out shaky. He's trying to intimidate me, prove some point about power and control. I'm not giving him the satisfaction. Arya. Chloe grabbed her hand, squeezing tight. Please be careful. Men like him don't play games. They win them. So do I, Arya said with more confidence than she felt. They flagged down a cab, climbing into the back seat in silence. As the taxi pulled into traffic, Arya caught her reflection in the window. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes too bright. She looked like a woman who'd just made a terrible decision and didn't regret it yet. The city blurred past, lights and shadows, promise and threat. Somewhere out there, Lucien Moreau was probably already planning his next move. Already 3 steps ahead in a game she'd foolishly agreed to play. She should be terrified. Instead, she smiled. Across the city, Lucien sat in the back of his black sedan, fingers steepled, watching the streets pass. Logan Pierce, his quiet lieutenant, glanced in the rearview mirror. The Blake woman, boss. Want me to set up surveillance? Already done. Lucian's voice was calm, controlled. I want to know everywhere she goes, everyone she talks to. But keep it subtle. She's smart. She'll notice if we're too obvious. Understood. Logan hesitated. If I may ask, why the bet? You could have just what? Taken what I wanted? Lucian's mouth curved slightly. Where's the satisfaction in that? She challenged me, Logan, in front of a room full of people. No one does that. No one dares. And now? Now she's going to learn what happens when you catch a predator's attention. Lucian's eyes gleamed in the darkness. She thinks this is about proving a point, about rich men and control. It's not? No. Lucian's smile widened, dangerous and satisfied. It's about showing her that the moment she shook my hand, she became mine. She just doesn't know it yet. The car glided through Manhattan's neon-lit streets, carrying him away into the night. Behind them, Arya Blake climbed the stairs to her apartment, still feeling the ghost of his hand in hers. Still replaying those 2 words that had changed everything. Wanna bet? She should have said no. But she'd never been good at walking away from challenges. And Lucian Moreau, with his obsidian eyes and dangerous smile, was the biggest challenge she'd ever faced. The bet had been made. The game had begun. And neither of them knew yet who would win. But both suspected that winning and losing might end up meaning the same thing. 3 days passed like fever dreams. Arya couldn't shake him. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Obsidian staring back. Patient, predatory, absolutely certain. His voice echoed in her quieter moments, smooth as smoke. Wanna bet? She'd wake at 3 a.m. with her heart racing, remembering the warmth of his hand, the deliberate brush of his thumb across her knuckles. It was absurd, infuriating. She'd met him once, spoken maybe 24 words. And yet Lucian Moreau had invaded her thoughts like he owned the real estate. At her office Monday morning, Arya stared at spreadsheets that refused to make sense. Numbers blurred together. Her coffee had gone cold an hour ago. Every time someone walked past her cubicle, she looked up, half expecting, half dreading to see him there. Earth to Arya. Clarissa Bennett's voice cut through her thoughts. Her coworker leaned against the partition, holding 2 fresh coffees and wearing a knowing smirk. You've been staring at that same cell for 20 minutes. Either you've discovered the secret to eternal life in those numbers, or something happened this weekend. Arya accepted the coffee gratefully. Nothing happened. Liar. You have that look? What look? The one that says you met someone way out of your league and you can't stop thinking about them. Clarissa settled into her chair, spinning to face Arya directly. Spill. There's nothing to spill. Chloe dragged me to some overpriced lounge. I made a comment. Some guy overheard. End of story. Some guy. Clarissa's eyes gleamed with interest. Was he hot? Arya hesitated a beat too long. Oh my God, he was hot. Clarissa practically bounced in her seat. How hot? Like corporate shark hot or dangerous stranger hot? I didn't notice. You absolutely noticed. Clarissa grinned. Did you get his number? No. Did he get yours? I didn't give it to him. But he asked? Arya opened her mouth to respond when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Thinking about me? Her breath caught. No signature. No context. Just those 3 words that felt like a hand closing around her throat. She deleted the message without responding and shoved her phone in her drawer. You okay? Clarissa asked, frowning. You just went pale. I'm fine. Just tired. Arya forced a smile. Didn't sleep well. But Clarissa's expression said she didn't believe it. That evening, Arya left work later than usual, the sun already dipping below the skyline. She walked the 6 blocks to her apartment building, bag over her shoulder, mind occupied with deadlines and mysterious texts, and men who shouldn't matter. She was halfway up her block when she noticed it. A black sedan parked across the street, engine running, tinted windows so dark she couldn't see inside. Just sitting there in the amber glow of the streetlight, watching. Arya's steps slowed. She told herself it was nothing, just someone waiting for a passenger, a rideshare idling between fares. But her instincts screamed otherwise. She stopped on the sidewalk, staring directly at the vehicle. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then the engine revved once, and the sedan pulled away from the curb. Smooth, deliberate, disappearing around the corner like smoke. Arya stood frozen, heart hammering, hands trembling around her bag strap. "I don't need your number." His voice echoed in her memory, and suddenly the city felt smaller, less safe. She hurried inside her building, locked her door with shaking hands, and poured herself a glass of wine she didn't taste. The flowers arrived the next evening. Arya came home to find them sitting outside her apartment door, a bouquet of deep red roses, almost black in the hallway's dim light, arranged in crystal that caught the light like blood. No delivery card, no florist label, just a small cream envelope tucked between the stems. She carried them inside with trembling hands, setting them on her kitchen counter before opening the note. Elegant handwriting, black ink, 7 words. "You shouldn't talk about men you don't understand." Arya read it 3 times, pulse accelerating with each pass. This wasn't flirtation. This was a warning wrapped in roses. She grabbed her phone, typing furiously. "This is harassment." The response came within seconds. "This is a reminder. You made a bet. I intend to collect. I didn't agree to be stalked. You agreed to let me prove you wrong. That requires observation." Her hands shook with anger, and something else she refused to name. "Stay away from me." No. The single word landed like a promise. Like inevitability. Arya threw her phone across the room, where it landed on the couch with a soft thud. She stared at the roses, beautiful, expensive, threatening, and felt the first real spike of fear cut through her curiosity. This wasn't a game. Whatever she'd thought she was playing, Lucien Moreau was playing something else entirely. On Thursday night, against her better judgment, Arya found herself back at the lounge. She told herself it was to confront him, to demand he back off. But deep down, she knew the truth. She wanted to see him again, needed to understand what this dangerous thing between them actually was. The lounge was quieter on weeknights. Same golden light, same jazz, but fewer people. She settled at the bar, and Ben appeared immediately, already pouring before she could order. "Ms. Blake?" His voice was careful, controlled. "Didn't expect to see you back so soon." "Just needed a drink, Ben." She accepted the glass, taking a long sip. "Is he here?" Ben didn't ask who she meant. "No, but his people are." Arya glanced around the lounge, suddenly aware of eyes she couldn't quite identify. Men in dark suits scattered throughout the space, not watching her directly but aware of her nonetheless. "Ben," she said quietly, "tell me about him. About Lucien Moreau." The bartender's hands stilled on the glass he'd been polishing. For a long moment, he didn't speak. "That man from the other night," he finally said, voice barely above a whisper. "Lucien Moreau. Stay away from him, Miss Blake." "Why?" She leaned closer. "What is he?" "The kind of man who doesn't hear no." Ben's eyes held genuine concern. People disappear around him. Business rivals. Former associates. Anyone who gets too close or knows too much. Arya's laugh came out nervous, shaky. You're joking. Ben didn't answer, didn't smile, just held her gaze with an expression that made her stomach drop. I'm not joking, he said finally. And neither is he. Whatever game you think you're playing, Miss Blake, he invented the rules, and he doesn't lose. I can handle myself. I'm sure you can, under normal circumstances. Ben set down his cloth. But there's nothing normal about Lucien Moreau. He wants something from you, or he wants you. Either way, the outcome is the same. Which is? You disappear into his world. Ben's voice was sad, resigned. And you don't come back out. The words hung between them like a death sentence. Arya finished her drink, left cash on the bar, and walked out into the night. The city glittered around her, neon and shadow, promise and threat. Her heels clicked against pavement as she walked, refusing to look behind her even though she felt eyes tracking her movement. The black sedan was back, parked half a block down. She could see it in her peripheral vision, engine running, waiting. Her phone buzzed. Walking home alone? That's dangerous. She didn't respond, didn't slow down. Just kept moving, pulse hammering, curiosity warring with fear in equal measure. Another text. I could have Logan drive you, or I could come myself. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She should block the number, should call the police, should do anything except what she was about to do. I don't need your protection. No, but you want my attention, and you have it. All of it. The admission made her breath catch. Because he was right. Infuriatingly, dangerously right. She wanted his attention, craved it like addiction. And that terrified her more than any threat. Arya made it to her building, climbed the stairs to her apartment, locked herself inside. Through her window, she could see the black sedan still parked on the street. Watching. Waiting. She should be scared. Should be calling the police, packing a bag, running somewhere he couldn't find her. Instead, she stood at the window, staring down at the vehicle, and felt her pulse race with something that wasn't quite fear. Excitement. Anticipation. The electric thrill of standing at the edge of an abyss and wondering what it would feel like to fall. Her phone buzzed one final time. Sleep well, Arya. Tomorrow, we begin. She didn't sleep, and her curiosity, dangerous, consuming, unstoppable, was already stronger than her fear. The office was silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional buzz from the street below. Arya had stayed late again, half because she wanted to catch up on work, half because she didn't want to go home. Sleep had become an illusion lately, fractured by thoughts she couldn't shut off. The roses sat on her desk, dark and perfect, their scent heavy in the air. She told herself she'd throw them away tomorrow. She told herself a lot of things she didn't believe anymore. Her fingers moved across the keyboard, but her eyes kept flicking to the glass wall of her office. The reflection there wasn't hers this time. A tall figure stood behind her in the doorway. She froze. Working late? The voice was smooth, low, familiar in a way that made her pulse stumble. Arya turned slowly in her chair. Lucien Moreau leaned against the frame, hands in the pockets of his tailored coat, calm as if he belonged there. The city lights behind him painted his profile in cold silver and warm gold. How did you? Your building's security is appallingly easy to bypass, he interrupted. You should consider moving. Her heart thudded, but she forced her voice steady. You can't just show up here. You shouldn't walk home alone, he said. I don't recall asking your concern. Lucien stepped farther into the office, the click of his shoes unnervingly quiet on the floor. You mocked me, he said evenly. That makes you mine to deal with. Her breath caught. I'm not yours to deal with, Mr. Moreau. He smiled faintly, not amused, intrigued. Arya, he said softly, letting her name linger in the space between them. You really think you get to decide that? The words shouldn't have sent a shiver through her, but they did. She stood, crossing her arms, trying to shield herself with posture. What do you want? Honesty, he said. From you. From myself, maybe. That's vague. Then let me clarify. He came closer, stopping just within the edge of her personal space. I want to understand what makes a woman like you so brave, or so foolish, that she'd challenge a man she doesn't understand. Arya's lips curved in a brittle smile. Maybe I don't scare easily. Or maybe, he murmured, you've never met someone worth being afraid of. The silence stretched. Her pulse was loud in her ears. For a heartbeat, she thought he might touch her, but he didn't. Instead, he turned toward the door. You should go home, he said. With someone you trust. I'm not your responsibility. He paused, glanced back over his shoulder. You are now. And then he was gone, like a shadow that had simply stepped out of existence. Arya exhaled shakily, sinking back into her chair. The office felt colder now, emptier, as if he'd taken something invisible with him. She packed her things and left, taking the long way home. The city felt different, closer, sharper. Every echo of her footsteps seemed watched. That night, her phone lit up on the nightstand just as she turned off the lights. A single message blinked on the screen. He can't protect you forever. Raven. Her stomach dropped. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the words. Then she typed back. Who is this? No response. Just the read receipt, mocking her. The apartment felt too quiet. The shadows, too thick. In the morning, she met Chloe for coffee, her exhaustion hidden under concealer and forced smiles. You look terrible, Chloe said bluntly, stirring her latte. And before you lie, no, it's not just work stress. Arya hesitated, then told her everything. The flowers, the messages, the visit at her office. Chloe's reaction was immediate. Oh my God, Arya. This isn't romantic, this is dangerous. He hasn't hurt me. Yet. Chloe leaned in. Men like him don't fall in love, Arya. They conquer. They take. Arya flinched at the truth in that. I can handle him. Chloe shook her head. That's what everyone says before they can't. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken fears hanging heavy between them. When they parted, Chloe hugged her tight. Promise me you'll be careful. I will, Arya said softly, though she wasn't sure she knew what careful meant anymore. By the time she got home that evening, her nerves were frayed. She unlocked her apartment door and froze. It was open. Just slightly, the latch not fully caught. Her breath stilled. She pushed the door open with trembling fingers. Everything looked the same at first glance. The couch, the books, the untouched roses on the counter. But something felt off, like the air itself had been moved. She picked up a lamp, gripping it like a weapon as she stepped inside. Hello? Silence. She checked every room, her heart hammering, but found nothing. No one. Just the faint smell of his cologne. Impossible, haunting. Her phone lay on the kitchen table where she'd left it. She snatched it up and dialed before she could stop herself. He answered on the first ring. I told you, Lucian said calmly. You're not safe. Her throat tightened. Were you here? A pause. Does it matter? Yes. Then yes. Why? She demanded. To make sure no one else was. She closed her eyes, torn between fury and relief. You can't just break into my apartment. I can when I have reason to believe someone else already has. I didn't ask for your protection. You didn't have to. Lucian. Arya. His voice softened, low enough to make her pulse skip. You made a bet with me. You can walk away from it if you want. But you'll do it alive. That's the only rule I won't break. She wanted to scream at him, to hang up, to stop this spiraling descent into whatever this was becoming. But instead, she whispered, "This isn't how normal people live." "Normal is boring," he said simply. "And you're not boring." The line clicked dead before she could answer. She stared at her reflection in the window, the city lights glowing like distant fires behind her, and realized her world had shifted completely. She wasn't just in danger. She was already in his orbit. The black car was back the next morning, sleek, tinted, and impossible to ignore. It idled in front of Arya's building like a shadow that refused to move. She stood by her window, staring down at it, coffee cooling in her hand. She already knew who it belonged to. When she finally stepped outside, the back door opened automatically. Logan Pierce sat behind the wheel, impassive in a dark suit and gloves, eyes hidden behind mirrored sunglasses. "Miss Blake," he said quietly, voice carrying a weight that didn't need volume. "Mr. Moreau asked me to drive you to work." Arya crossed her arms. "You can tell Mr. Moreau I'm capable of using public transportation." "I can," Logan replied evenly, "but I won't. Please get in." She hesitated. The city hummed around them, cars passing, a woman walking her dog, the normal rhythm of life that felt galaxies away from Lucian's world. She wanted to resist, to make a point. But then she noticed the faint earpiece in Logan's ear, the way his posture screamed military precision. Refusing wasn't an option. "Fine," she muttered, sliding into the back seat. The leather was soft, the air faintly scented with cedarwood and smoke, the same as Lucian's cologne. The drive was silent, efficient. When they reached her office, Logan exited the car first, scanning the area before opening her door. "You don't have to do that," she said. He gave a brief nod. "You'd be surprised how often people think that." Arya exhaled through her nose, brushing past him. But all day, she couldn't shake the image of that car waiting outside, the invisible line it drew between her and the rest of the world. That evening, she decided enough was enough. She called Lucian. He answered on the first ring, as always. "Miss Blake, I need to see you." A pause. "Where?" "My office. Tonight." When he arrived, she was already pacing. He looked completely out of place under the sterile fluorescent lights, immaculate in a dark suit, every movement deliberate. "You shouldn't have sent someone to follow me," she snapped. "I didn't send someone to follow you," he corrected smoothly. "I sent someone to keep you alive." "Same thing," she shot back. "You can't just take over my life." He stepped closer, gaze steady. "Why are you fighting me on this?" "Because I don't understand why you're doing it," she burst out. "You don't even know me." Lucian's eyes softened just slightly. "Because I can't stop thinking about you." The words landed like a blow, unexpected, disarming. She laughed once, breathless. "That's not an answer. That's an excuse." "It's the only truth I have," he said quietly. "You walked into my life and made me forget what control feels like." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them was too heavy, too charged. Finally, she whispered, "You can't control everything." His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Watch me." Later that week, Arya met Gianna Moreau in a small cafe tucked away in the quieter part of Manhattan. Gianna looked nothing like Lucian, softer, approachable, but her eyes carried the same knowing sharpness. "You shouldn't have agreed to meet me," Gianna said, stirring her coffee. If he finds out, I needed to talk to someone who actually tells the truth, Arya interrupted. I know who he is now. What he does. Gianna sighed. Then you also know that knowing too much about Lucian never ends well. Arya leaned forward. He says he's protecting me. Gianna's gaze flicked up. Steady. He is. But not out of kindness. Arya frowned. Then why? Because you make him lose control. And he hates that. Arya felt something cold settle in her chest. So I'm what? A problem he's trying to manage? Gianna didn't answer. She just reached into her bag, pulled out a slip of paper, and slid it across the table. If you ever need to disappear, call this number. Don't tell anyone. Especially not him. When Arya looked up again, Gianna was already leaving. That night, Arya couldn't sleep. She kept replaying Gianna's words. You make him lose control. She didn't know if that made her powerful or doomed, because she could feel it now, the invisible gravity of his world. And she was already too deep to climb out. The gala shimmered like a scene from a dream she had no business being in. Crystal chandeliers spilled light across marble floors, and the air smelled of champagne and quiet intimidation. Arya stood beside Lucian, her emerald gown a mirror of the one she'd worn the night they met. Only now, she didn't laugh so easily. Lucian was perfection in a tailored tuxedo, his hand resting lightly at her back. To anyone watching, they looked like a couple born of luxury and ease. But every step she took felt choreographed, every smile rehearsed. This isn't my world, she whispered. It is tonight, he said, without looking at her. Across the room, Marco DeLuca approached. He was all charm, handsome in a dangerous, oily way. His smile didn't reach his eyes. So, you're the woman who tamed the untamable, Marco said, taking her hand. His grip lingered too long. I'll admit, I didn't believe it when I heard. Lucian's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Careful, Marco, he said softly. You're trespassing. Marco laughed, letting her go. We're just talking. Unless that's forbidden in your kingdom. Arya felt the tension coil tighter between them. Lucian's men shifted subtly in the background. The air was thick with unspoken threats. Later, when they left the gala, Arya couldn't shake Marco's words, or Lucian's silence. By morning, a photo hit social media. Lucian's hand on her waist, her face tilted toward him mid-laugh. The caption read, Moreau's weakness exposed. When she showed him, Lucian didn't explode. He simply stared at the image for a long moment, then said in that calm, lethal tone, Someone close betrayed me, and they'll regret it. Arya's stomach turned. You can't just... He cut her off with a look. I can, and I will. Hours later, as she sat alone in her apartment, her phone buzzed again. You've just become a target, Raven. Her heart skipped. She looked up and froze. A small red dot glided across her wall, steady and unblinking. The sound of glass shattering filled the room. She dropped to the floor as a bullet tore through her window, spraying shards across the hardwood. Then came the crash of boots, the shouts of men. Lucian burst through the door with his guards seconds later. He crossed the distance to her in 2 strides, grabbing her shoulders. Are you hurt? No, she breathed. But... He pulled her close, his voice dark and quiet. You wanted proof of danger. There it is. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Inside, her heartbeat drowned out everything else. For the first time, she didn't argue. Because the truth was suddenly, painfully clear. Lucian hadn't brought danger into her life. She'd invited it the moment she laughed. The estate sat at the edge of the Atlantic like it had been carved from the coastline itself. Stone walls bleached by salt. Windows that watched the sea like sentinels. When the car stopped, Arya didn't move. The drive had been hours of silence. Only the rhythmic thrum of tires on asphalt, and the occasional glance from Logan in the rearview mirror. Lucian stepped out first, the ocean wind catching his coat, hair moving just enough to break the perfection of his composure. He turned back to her, hand extended. She didn't take it. "You can't just kidnap me and call it protection," she said. His tone didn't waver. "You were nearly killed in your apartment, Arya. You're not safe anywhere else. Then maybe I'd rather take my chances in my own bed." Lucian's gaze darkened, but there was something tired beneath it. "You don't have a choice." She got out of the car anyway, brushing past him. The scent of sea salt filled the air, mingled with pine and the faint sweetness of wildflowers. It should have been peaceful. It wasn't. Inside, the estate was all quiet grandeur. Stone fireplaces, glass walls that caught every flicker of the waves. But it felt sterile, like beauty built for someone who didn't know what warmth meant. By nightfall, she discovered what Lucian meant by safe. Every exit had security sensors. The gate required codes she didn't know. Even her phone had been replaced with a secure device that connected only to Lucian's network. Isolation had a sound. It was the echo of your own breathing. Days bled into each other. Lucian worked from his study, taking calls in French and Italian that always ended with words like shipment, territory, and deadlines. Arya explored, though explored was generous. Half the doors were locked, and the staff avoided her eyes like she was something fragile or forbidden. When Lucian finally appeared in the garden one evening, she didn't hold back. "You really are a control freak," she snapped. He raised a brow, glass of whiskey in hand. "Control keeps people alive." "And you think that's what I am to you? Just another person to keep alive?" His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "You think too small, Arya." "Then enlighten me." "You're chaos," he said simply. "You walk into a room and everything I've built starts to bend." She crossed her arms, heart beating faster than she wanted to admit. "Then maybe you need to stop building things that can break." The tension between them stretched, thin and electric. He took a slow step forward, then another. "You have no idea what you're doing to me," he murmured. "Then maybe you should find out," she whispered back. The kiss wasn't planned. It was inevitable, like the moment a match finally catches fire after the 10th strike. It wasn't gentle. It was hunger, frustration, the kind of touch that leaves bruises on the soul. When it broke, they didn't speak for a long time. The silence said enough. Later, he took her to the shooting range behind the estate, a place that smelled of oil and steel, echoing with waves from the cliffs below. "Grip higher," he said, adjusting her hands on the pistol. "You're fighting the recoil instead of controlling it." "Funny," she said. "You'd know a thing or two about control." He almost smiled. Almost. "You're learning." By dusk, she hit the center of the target. When she turned to look at him, he was watching her, not with the gaze of a man admiring skill, but of someone seeing danger wrapped in beauty. Back inside, she finally asked the question that had been haunting her. "Who were you before all this?" Lucian looked away, jaw tight. "Someone who thought loyalty was enough to make a man good." "And now?" He met her eyes. "Now I know better." For the first time, she saw the man behind the armor. The boy who'd once believed the world could be fixed, before realizing it had to be ruled instead. That night, they found peace. Not in safety, but in honesty. It didn't last. Gianna arrived just past midnight, pale and trembling. "There's a leak," she said. "Someone fed DeLuca your location." Lucian's composure snapped into place like a weapon. "Who?" Gianna shook her head. "I don't know, but it's someone close." Within minutes, the estate turned into a fortress. Guards armed, lights dimmed. Arya watched as Lucian moved like a storm. Calm, lethal precision. Then Dante Silva, Lucian's enforcer, stumbled into the room. His face was ashen, his eyes wild. "Boss, I need to explain." Lucian turned slowly. "You don't get to explain. You get to tell me why." Dante's hands shook. "He has my sister, DeLuca. He took her months ago. I thought I could get her back without hurting you, but—" The sound of Lucian's gun being cocked silenced him. Arya stepped forward. "Lucian, stop." His finger hovered over the trigger. Dante dropped to his knees. "Please. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just wanted her safe." Lucian's expression was unreadable. "You broke the only rule I ever had." Arya's voice cut through the tension. "Killing him won't save her. You know that." For a moment, Lucian looked at her like he was seeing the line between mercy and power, and trying to remember which side he stood on. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he lowered the gun. "Get out," he said quietly. "If I see you again, it won't end this way." Dante fled into the darkness, leaving silence in his wake. Lucian holstered his weapon and walked out without a word. Arya followed him to the terrace, where the ocean roared below. "You could have killed him." "I should have," he said. "But I didn't." "Why?" He turned, eyes hollow. "Because you asked me not to." For the first time, she understood the cost of his restraint. And for the first time, he looked afraid. Not of enemies, but of what she was becoming to him. The sky was gray the next morning, heavy with the promise of a storm. Lucian stood by the window, shirt sleeves rolled up, reading messages that made his jaw tighten. "I have to meet him," he said finally. Arya froze. "Meet who?" "DeLuca. He's offering a truce." Her laugh was sharp, disbelieving. "That's not a truce. That's a trap." He didn't argue, just looked at her with the calm certainty that terrified her more than anger. "If I don't end this, you'll never be safe." She stepped closer, gripping his arm. "Then don't go. We'll find another way." He brushed a strand of hair from her face, the gesture heartbreakingly gentle. "There's always another way, Arya. But not for men like me." Before she could respond, he pressed a kiss to her forehead. Soft, final. "Stay with Logan. If I'm not back by dawn, leave the country." Her throat closed. "Lucian." But he was already gone. Hours later, thunder rolled across the coast. Arya paced the length of the room, every tick of the clock like a countdown she couldn't stop. When Logan finally returned, soaked and silent, her heart stopped. "Where is he?" she demanded. Logan's jaw clenched. "Taken." The word shattered something inside her. "Taken? By who?" "DeLuca's men. He ordered us not to tell you." "Not to tell me?" Her voice cracked. "He's gone and you're following orders?" "Arya." "No," she said, grabbing her jacket. "You think I'm staying here while he dies for me? Not a chance." Logan hesitated. "You don't understand how dangerous." "I understand perfectly. He walked into this because of me. So either help me or get out of my way." Something in her conviction broke through his resolve. After a long moment, he nodded once. They worked through the night, tracing calls, intercepting messages, following whispers from the criminal underworld Lucian ruled. Every second felt like a heartbeat lost. Meanwhile, In a dim warehouse on the outskirts of the city, Lucian sat bound to a chair, blood streaking his jaw. Marco DeLuca circled him like a wolf savoring the kill. "You built an empire," DeLuca sneered, "and a woman made it fall." Lucian lifted his head, eyes burning with quiet defiance. "That woman is stronger than you'll ever understand." DeLuca laughed. "We'll see how strong she feels when she watches you die." Outside, thunder cracked. Inside, the storm had already begun. The rain came down in silver sheets, turning the docks into a maze of reflections. The river beyond was black, endless, swallowing the city lights whole. Arya crouched behind a stack of rusted containers, her breath visible in the cold air. Every sound felt amplified. The echo of boots on wet pavement, the metallic click of a gun being checked, the pulse in her own ears. Logan crouched beside her, eyes scanning the dark expanse of the warehouse ahead. "He's inside. East entrance. 2 guards. How many more?" she whispered. "Too many," Logan said grimly. "You shouldn't be here." Arya tightened her grip on the pistol. It felt heavier than she remembered. "You said that already." "I meant it." "I know." She looked toward the flickering lights spilling through the cracks of the warehouse doors. "But he would have done the same for me." Logan didn't argue. He just nodded once, the kind of nod soldiers gave before walking into something they knew they might not walk out of. Thunder rolled over the water as they moved, keeping low, hugging the shadows. Every few feet, she could see the flashes of Lucian's men spreading out. Silent, efficient, ghosts in the rain. The closer she got, the more her heart hammered, not from fear, but from knowing she was close. Close to him. The warehouse doors loomed ahead, massive and corroded with age. One of DeLuca's guards stood near the entrance, a cigarette glowing red between his fingers. Logan motioned for her to stay back. She shook her head. Before he could protest, she stepped into the open, raising the gun with both hands. The man barely had time to turn before she fired. The shot cracked through the night, echoing off the river. The guard collapsed. Logan swore under his breath. "Guess we're not sneaking in anymore." "Good," Arya said. "I'm done hiding." They pushed through the doors. The interior smelled of oil and rust, and something metallic that wasn't quite old. Blood. Light came from a few hanging bulbs, swaying with the draft. Crates lined the walls. And at the center, tied to a metal chair, was Lucian. His head hung low, blood running down his temple. DeLuca stood in front of him, a pistol in one hand and a glass of whiskey in the other. "You should have stayed in your tower, Moreau," DeLuca was saying. "You built your kingdom out of fear. Did you think it would never turn on you?" Lucian lifted his head slowly. His voice, even hoarse, carried power. "Fear built it. Loyalty kept it standing." Until she showed up. DeLuca smiled coldly. "The little joke that turned into your downfall." Arya stepped forward, gun trembling in her grip. "Let him go." DeLuca froze for half a heartbeat, then turned. "Well," he said, amused, "the queen arrives." He studied her like one might a strange creature. "And here I thought you'd already run. Guess I overestimated your sense of self-preservation." Her voice came steady, despite the adrenaline flooding her veins. "I'm not here to run." "Ah," DeLuca chuckled. "You really think you're part of this game?" He gestured toward Lucian with the gun. "He didn't tell you, did he? Every man here would die for him. Every woman, well, they usually just disappear." Arya raised her weapon higher. "You should be afraid of women who don't." DeLuca smirked. "Cute." The next second, she fired. The bullet tore past his shoulder, close enough that it made him stumble. His smirk vanished. "You missed," he said, voice sharp now. "I wasn't aiming," she replied. Then all hell broke loose. Gunfire erupted from the catwalks as Lucian's men stormed in. Muzzles flashed through the dark, sparks bouncing off metal. Logan shouted for cover. Arya dropped to the ground, crawling toward Lucian as bullets shattered the crates beside her. "Arya!" Lucian's voice was raw. "Get out! Not without you!" She reached him, hands fumbling at the knots binding his wrists. Her fingers were slick with blood. His, maybe hers, but she didn't stop. A guard appeared from behind a pillar, aiming at her. Before she could react, Logan's shot dropped him instantly. "Go!" he yelled. Lucian's bonds gave way. He grabbed a fallen weapon and rose. The transformation instantaneous. The exhaustion vanished, replaced by the cold efficiency of the man she'd first met. The man who didn't hesitate. He fired twice, then turned to her. "Stay behind me." "I'm not—" "Now, Arya." The command left no room for argument. She obeyed, ducking behind a metal crate as he advanced. DeLuca tried to run. Lucian followed, relentless. They collided near the far end of the warehouse, the fight raw and brutal. DeLuca swung but Lucian blocked, driving a knee into his ribs. The sound of impact was sickening. DeLuca's gun skidded across the floor. Lucian kicked it away and pinned him against a stack of barrels, pistol pressed to his throat. "You should have stayed out of my world," Lucian said. DeLuca spat blood, sneering. "And you should have remembered. You're not God, Moreau." Lucian's expression didn't change. "No, but I decide when the devil leaves the room." The shot was deafening. DeLuca crumpled. The echo faded slowly, drowned by the sound of rain hammering the roof. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Logan's voice cut through the haze. "All clear." Arya exhaled shakily, the pistol slipping from her hand. It was over. Or so she thought. A flicker of motion caught her eye. One of DeLuca's men, barely conscious, blood pooling beneath him, lifted his arm. The muzzle of his gun glinted under the hanging light. "Lucian!" she screamed. Before he could turn, she moved, shoving him aside just as the gun fired. The bullet tore past, grazing her arm. Pain flared white-hot, stealing her breath. Lucian spun, firing once. The man dropped instantly. Arya staggered, clutching her arm. Blood seeped through her fingers. Lucian was beside her in seconds, catching her before she fell. "No, no, no," he muttered, voice shaking for the first time. He tore off his jacket, pressing it against the wound. "You don't get to risk yourself for me." Her voice was faint but steady. "Too late, I already did." He stared at her, rain dripping from his hair, eyes burning with something she'd never seen in him before. Fear. "Why would you do that?" he asked quietly. She gave a half smile, weak but defiant. "You told me once I made you lose control. I guess I wanted to prove you weren't the only one." He almost laughed, the sound breaking in his throat. "You're insane." "And you love it," she whispered. He held her tighter, pressing his forehead to hers. "You don't understand what that means in my world." "I don't care about your world," she murmured. "Just don't make me leave it." Outside, the storm raged. Inside, the last echoes of gunfire faded into silence. Logan approached carefully. "We need to move. Police will be here soon." Lucian nodded, still holding her. "Get the car." When Logan left, Arya forced herself to meet Lucian's eyes. "It's over now." He shook his head. "It's never over. Not for me." "Then make it different," she said softly. "Start now." Lucian looked at her for a long time, as if weighing the possibility. Then he brushed his thumb along her jaw, his voice low. "You said rich men don't know how to please a woman." She blinked through the pain, managing a faint smirk. Yeah? He leaned closer, lips brushing her ear. Maybe you were right. Her laugh was weak but real. Maybe. His grip on her tightened. But I know how to protect one. Thunder rolled again, distant now. He lifted her in his arms, carrying her toward the open doors where the rain still fell like shattered glass. The night smelled of smoke and victory, and something else, something fragile and terrifying that neither of them dared to name. Behind them, DeLuca's empire burned. Ahead, the world waited, reborn, uncertain, alive. And as Lucian carried her into the storm, Arya realized she wasn't falling anymore. She was flying straight into the fire with him. Morning light crept slowly across the sterile white walls, tracing gold lines through the blinds and landing on the edge of the hospital bed. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant, and rain carried in from the open window. Arya stirred, her body heavy but her mind floating somewhere between memory and dream. Her arm throbbed where the bullet had grazed her, bandaged now, neat and precise. Machines hummed softly beside her, the steady beep grounding her back to the world. When she turned her head, she saw him. Lucian sat slumped in a chair beside her, the kind of exhaustion that couldn't be hidden written in every line of his face. His suit jacket hung over the back of the chair. His sleeves were rolled up, and for once, he didn't look like the man who owned the city. He just looked human, tired, alive, watching over her. She couldn't help the small, weary smile that touched her lips. "You're still here," she whispered. His eyes opened immediately, sharp even after sleep. When he saw her awake, something unguarded flickered in his expression. Relief, so raw it almost hurt to see. "Where else would I be?" he murmured, voice rough. She shifted, wincing slightly as pain flared through her arm. "You look terrible." He exhaled, half a laugh, half a sigh. "You should see yourself." For a moment, silence settled between them, comfortable, fragile. Then his mouth curved into that familiar, dangerous smirk. Softer now, but still edged with mischief. "You said rich men don't know how to please a woman," he said quietly. "Guess I had to prove you wrong." Her laugh came out weak but genuine. "Guess you did." Lucian leaned forward, brushing a strand of hair from her face. His fingers lingered, trembling just slightly. "You scared me." She smiled faintly. "You don't get scared." "I do now." Something in his voice made her chest tighten. There was no pretense left, no mask of power or control, just a man admitting what he'd never dared to before. "Rest," he said finally. "You need it." "I will," she whispered. "But only if you promise not to disappear when I wake up." He hesitated, then nodded. "I won't." It was the first promise he ever made her that didn't sound like a command. Weeks passed. The city shifted, quietly, as if holding its breath. Rumors moved faster than truth. DeLuca's organization collapsed overnight. His allies scattered, his empire swallowed by silence. And Lucian Moreau, the man whose name once carried both reverence and fear, began to withdraw from the world he'd built. He sold off properties, ended old alliances. When asked, he only said one thing: "I'm simplifying." Arya read the headlines from her small apartment, the same one she'd once feared was being watched. She'd gone back to work, back to routines that felt strangely foreign now. Every sound, every shadow, every glance on the street reminded her how different everything was, and how much of her heart was still tied to the man she couldn't forget. Chloe called often, checking in, still half in disbelief. "You know you're insane, right? Normal people don't fall for men who make the FBI nervous." Arya smiled through the phone. Normal's overrated. You could at least tell me he's out of your life. Arya hesitated, her gaze drifting to the window where the city lights blinked like restless eyes. He's not out of it. He's just quieter. Chloe sighed. That might be worse. Maybe it was, but Arya had stopped trying to define what worse or better meant when it came to Lucien Moreau. He wasn't a chapter that could be closed. He was ink on her skin, permanent, invisible, impossible to forget. It was almost midnight when she found herself back at the lounge. The same golden lights, the same quiet hum of music and laughter, the same skyline glittering beyond the glass walls. Ben, the bartender, froze when he saw her. "Didn't think I'd see you again," he said, polishing a glass with deliberate calm. Arya smiled faintly. "Guess I missed the overpriced drinks. Or the trouble that came with them." She didn't argue, just ordered her usual and took the same seat she'd had that first night, the night she laughed too loud and changed everything. For a moment, she closed her eyes, letting the music fill the silence that had lived inside her for weeks. She didn't know what she was expecting. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. The air shifted before she heard him. "Still think rich men can't please a woman?" Her eyes opened. Lucien stood there, immaculate as ever, but different. Softer, somehow. His tie was undone, his hair slightly mussed from the wind, and his expression held something rare. Hope. She turned slowly, her heart doing that treacherous, familiar skip. Depends who's asking. He stepped closer, the world shrinking around them until it felt like they were the only two people in it. "Round two?" he asked. Arya raised her glass, the faintest smirk curving her lips. "You'll lose again." Lucien smiled, the kind of smile that used to promise danger, but now only promised her. "That's the plan." Ben pretended not to watch as he poured another drink, sliding it toward Lucien without being asked. The music swelled, low and sultry, wrapping around them like smoke. Lucien sat beside her, their shoulders brushing, the quiet between them filled with everything they didn't need to say aloud. "Why did you come back?" she asked after a moment, her voice soft. He looked down at his glass, then at her. "Because I didn't like the idea of you sitting here alone. Not again. You think you can just walk back into my life? I don't think I ever really left it." She studied him, the faint scars, the exhaustion behind his eyes, the man who'd burned a kingdom to save her. "Lucien," she said quietly, "you can't keep protecting me from the world." He met her gaze, steady and sure. "I'm not trying to protect you anymore, Arya. I'm trying to be part of your world instead." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a confession. It was something deeper, a surrender. Arya's chest tightened. She lifted her glass and clinked it lightly against his. "You're impossible." He leaned closer. "So are you." The moment stretched, soft and golden, until time itself seemed to slow. Outside, the city glowed. Inside, two people who shouldn't have worked, did. When she laughed, it wasn't sharp or defiant like before. It was quiet, content, unguarded. And in that sound, Lucien finally understood. It had never been about a bet. Not really. It was about a woman who dared to challenge him, and a man powerful enough to let her win. She laughed again, and his heart, that cold and careful thing, finally gave in. It wasn't a bet anymore. It was surrender, and she'd already won. Love this story? Hit subscribe and be part of our growing story family. Even if you're watching on your TV, a quick click means the world and helps us bring you more emotional, unforgettable tales like this one.